Welcome to Palestine Studies TV. I am Omar Baddar. As we're recording this program, we are in the midst of a ceasefire that has, at least for now, put an end to Israel's assault on Gaza, which has left more than 1,800 people dead, overwhelmingly civilians, including hundreds of children. The devastation of Gaza through this assault has actually surpassed the assault of 2009, or what is known as Operation Cast Lead, which killed more than 1,400 Palestinians, also overwhelmingly civilians. Our guest today, Amer Shurrab, has actually had a very personal, tragic experience with both of these conflicts. He is currently a student in California, a graduate student, and he is originally from Khan Yunis in Gaza. And he has actually lost family members in both the 2009 round and this latest round of the assault on Gaza. Amer, thank you very much for being with us today. Tell us about the news that you heard from your family just a few days ago.
Where to start? Well, about 3 weeks ago, was in Seattle when was with some friends, just having a potluck, and got the news that a cousin of mine was killed, or we got the name of someone from Shurrab family who was killed, and called my mom, and she confirmed that my cousin Hamid Shurrab was killed. Hamid is 22 now, or was 22. He's his parents' eldest. And he was visiting some friends. It was the Ramadan evening. He was visiting some friends. He left their house at around 1 a.m. and he was walking back to their house, just 2-3 blocks away, and he was targeted by a drone, directly targeted by a drone, and killed. No one knew that it happened at the time. And an hour later, his friend's house was Israeli Air Force targeted his friend's house, killing 2 of his friends and wounding everyone else. So the neighbors, including Muhammad's dad, rushed to the house to try to evacuate the wounded in fear of the house being bombed again. And his father was actually a little mad at him, wondering, where is Muhammad? Why isn't he helping us out in this bind? Well, where did he go? So the ambulances arrived. They took the 2 fatalities to the hospital, started evacuating the wounded. And then around 4 or 5 a.m., when the lights started coming out, people who were walking the street saw Muhammad's body on the street. And he was taken to the hospital and identified. His lower half was turned into shreds. And then about a week later, I got the news that second cousin's house was bombed. Initial news was 3 were killed and several injured, and then was calling back and forth. Initially we got the report that no one was hurt, but some cousins were missing. And then but the next, by the evening, it transpired my cousin Yad was killed, and by the next morning, that was the day where they had that first ceasefire, was 12 or 14-hour ceasefire, and on further investigation, they extracted also the bodies of Wasim's 2 brothers. All 3 of them got married last year, and they're all in their early 20s, and now they're no longer with us. And then 2 days ago, actually, my cousin's house also got bombed. No one was hurt, fortunately, but she, her two kids, her husband, and all her in-laws, over 30 people who lived in a four apartment house, they all lost their homes and staying with relatives. And yesterday we have a farm in Khan Yunis and Fukhari near Khan Yunis that my dad built from scratch. He turned desert into bloom. We had a little house there, and we managed to access it for the first time yesterday, and everything is destroyed. Everything inside the house, everything is burned down, everything is melted. The books, the desks, the marble, and then all the trees are gone.
What must make this particularly difficult is that this is not even the first time you've been through this. So there was Operation Cast Lead in 2009, and you've lost two of your brothers during that time. Can you recount to us what actually happened?
Very, very briefly. It was January 16th, 2009. My dad, Hamid, and my two brothers, Kassab, an architect, and Ibrahim, who was a freshman in college. They spent the night in that farm I just mentioned. And on Friday they waited for that daily lull or ceasefire, humanitarian lull, to start, and they started driving home around 12:30 or 12:45 p.m. in the middle of the lull. They drove for about 800 meters, and they were surprised to see an Israeli tank on the side of the road. The soldiers in the tank waved them to drive through. They drove for another maybe couple hundred meters or so, and then they came under fire. Israeli soldiers who occupied a residential civilian house on the side of the road started shooting at them without a warning. They knew very well that they were civilians, and they knew very well their identity. Due to the close proximity of our farm to the borders, they knew who they are exactly, and they started shooting at them without warning. Not on the engine block, not on the tires, but at the passengers. My dad was hit with a bullet in his left arm, and he shouted at my brothers to duck. He ducked, and they hit a wall and came to stop. Soldiers started shouting at them, "Get out of the car, you sons of bitches." My brother Kassab, who was at the passenger seat, hopped out, and he was immediately struck by a hail of bullets. The soldiers could see them very well. It's not even 40 meters, like about 120 feet or so. And he was struck by a hail of bullets, and he collapsed immediately. My dad and Ibrahim got out on the other side of the car, and they were pinned down to their location. They were not allowed to move at all under the threat of being shot at. My brother Ibrahim, when he got out of the car, he was shot at his left leg, just under the knee.
Essentially on purpose. This is not a violent escalation kind of situation. He's just standing there.
This is civilians driving during the ceasefire. Known civilians driving during ceasefire. They came and they were shot at. Their car stopped. They were ordered to get out of the car, and they were shot at directly and visibly. Initially, they were not allowed to call anyone. The soldiers refused to offer them any aid, not a bandit, nothing to stop the bleeding, no water, no blanket, nothing. Later, they could see my dad and my brother. They could talk to them. And after about 40 minutes or so, they told my dad, "You can call an ambulance," and my dad did, and my uncle came with an ambulance. He reached the area. He was about maybe 100 or 200 meters away from them, but the Israelis told them, the Israeli army told them, go back or we're going to shoot at you. That's the ambulance. And my dad was calling the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, local human rights organizations were calling. He was sending his pleas for help. No help was forthcoming. He started sending pleas on TV. Journalists, first local journalists were calling him. He was giving pleas on local radio and local TV channels, asking for help, defining the location, asking for an ambulance to come pick him up and his two wounded kids. No help was coming. International media was calling, Al Jazeera, BBC, etc. They were calling, nothing. And every time we called the Red Cross, we know about the situation. We're coordinating with the Israelis, and they refuse to allow an ambulance to approach them. The shooting happened around 1 p.m. on Friday, around 5, once it got dark. My dad realized, saw some cats nibbling on Kassab's body, just a few meters away. So he started crawling toward him. The soldiers again warned him not to move, shot a few rounds around him. And he didn't care. He reached him, checked his pulse, checked his body temperature. He realized he was dead. Turned him on his back, took Kassab's coat off and covered his face with it and crawled back next to Ibrahim. And around midnight, my dad got off another call with Al Jazeera, and he turned to Ibrahim, asked him, "Daddy, are you okay? Are you cold, Ibrahim?" And he didn't respond. He checked his pulse and his forehead, and he realized he was no longer with us. And so he bled to death for 11 hours.
Precisely because they would not let an ambulance.
Exactly. They wouldn't let an ambulance reach him, and they would not give any help. Meanwhile, we were calling all over trying to get help through. And the Red Cross, Physicians for Human Rights, the news agencies in the U.S., no help was forthcoming. Finally, we reached a member of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, around 7 a.m., and he talked to the Israeli army, and he got a permission to send an ambulance through, but not until noon on Saturday, because that's when the daily lull started on that day. The soldiers came down around 6 a.m. from that house, and my dad at that point told them, "Kill me now, shoot me, put me out of my misery." They looked at him, they laughed, shrugged their shoulders, and kept walking. The ambulance came around noon and picked them up and took them to the European hospital in Khan Yunis that was less than a mile away. If they were allowed to crawl to the hospital, they would have made it and they would have survived. Kassab, we discovered that he was hit with 18 bullets across the chest, the arms, and the stomach. What we learned later was even more horrifying. The soldiers had held about 11 residents of that house and the neighbors as hostages in the house they were occupying. And some of them understood Hebrew and could hear the communication between the soldiers and their commanders. One of those witnesses said he heard the communication between a soldier and one of the soldiers and a commander. The soldier said, "We see a civilian car coming, what should we do?" And the commander said, "Shoot." The soldier wanted to confirm, "Shoot." The commander said, "Shoot, shoot to kill." And they did. They had a medic in that unit. And the soldiers again inquired with their commander, should we send a medic to help them? And the commander said, "No, we don't any witnesses. They're civilians. We don't want this story to get out. Let them die."
I have just one final question for you. Certainly, you've talked about the story of your brothers a few times at this point to the media. Beyond the horrific thing that actually happened to them on the hands of the Israeli military. Can you just talk a little bit about the kind of people they were before that incident?
That is one of the most painful questions to deal with. Just to remember really the happy memories. Some of them are happy memories, some of them are sad memories. They were wonderful kids. I come from a big family. We're 8 kids in my family. My brother Kassab was an architect, and he was quite geeky. He does a lot of work with computers and get a computer, tear it apart into pieces, reassemble it, put it back together. I remember one night he was working on a project, like he has to final project for one of his classes where he has to create like a design for some like residential center and the parks, and he was using AutoCAD, and he had also to do the miniature, what's the word for it?
Like almost a sample, or just essentially a model.
Yeah, a model, yeah. So he would get me, my brother Ahmed, and 2 or 3 of our cousins, get us all into his office or his study room, and we're gluing little pieces of trees together and putting them in the right place, and then they have to be exactly the same size, the same shape. And then he was working on a computer. He just installed Windows 2000 on his computer, but AutoCAD wouldn't run on that, so he had to get my cousin's hard drive, put it in the computer, and try to get it to work. I remember these days. I remember our nights of playing cards or playing volleyball or going to the beach or going to our farm. My dad and I, for instance, we have a chicken farm, or had a chicken farm, and sometimes we would have 9,000 birds there, but for poultry production, but neither my dad or I could slaughter chicken. So when Kassab comes, he can do it, and that's when we feast. I remember Ibrahim. Ibrahim was quite the entrepreneur. So when he was killed, he was 5 days shy of his 18th birthday. But from like the age of 12 or 13, he was saving his allowance and trying to invest it. He was raising some rabbits and chicks and ducks. He would buy them as chicks or baby rabbits. He would raise them and feed them, invest in them, and then go to the market and sell them, and then he enjoys that money. He's like, I earned that money. I enjoy it so much. He was our little boy. He is the youngest, and I remember one time we were traveling, and we used to live in Saudi Arabia, and we were driving from Saudi Arabia to Jordan to get through Gaza. And we had quite a bit of luggage there, and one of them is like a big bag of things that was up and on the car, on top of the car, and so call it shalita. So every time he says, Salita tahat. Salita tahat.
Which translates?
The luggage fell off the car.
I know this must be difficult. I mean, essentially, I thought it was important to ask because I think it's important for people to understand that Palestinians, beyond just figures of 1,800 dead, that these are actual lives, the lives of real people that I think anyone can identify with if you just look a little bit closer than just plain statistics as the way they're very often presented. Absolutely. I know that this is a very difficult time for you and your family right now, and I just want to express my deep condolences for that and for essentially appreciation for the fact that you were able to still make time to come and talk to us in the middle of all this. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks. For you at home, you can watch more episodes of Palestine Studies TV by going to the website at palestine-studies.org. Thank you for watching.